Hi, everybody. This is Austin with Fantasy Baseball on Deck, and we are 1 week into the regular season, 2023 Fantasy Baseball. We are 7 days in. We have 4 days left before the first matchup ends. And there's a lot that we can do in this very first week to make sure that we're set up for success. So the 4 things that I want to cover in this video specifically is that I want to give you guys an update on the cheat sheet that I shared with everybody. I want to show you kind of how I'm doing, my performance, my scoring update, how am I doing across my 2 leagues. I'm going to talk about my roster construction and kind of the strategy moving forward, about like why I built my rosters, my 2 teams in a certain way, and kind of how it gives me flexibility moving forward to make the most of this roster. And then I have already completed 1 trade. So a trade update and kind of like the strategy and the scope of why I did it and kind of like how it fits my particular situation. So if I share my screen over here, I am on the shared drive. This is a shared drive. If you guys have never been here before, every year before the fantasy baseball season begins, I basically create a 1 through 400 plus player list. I color code and give notes onto into every single player, basically that's draftable within fantasy baseball. And like it's done really, really well. Last year, I had only 247 people. I didn't, my very first video basically broadcasted this cheat sheet idea that I wanted to provide value to all of you for free, invest into you before I ever asked you, and to invest into me. And boy, like over just a 1 year period, you guys have just over and over again fueled me to keep going with the positive support and letting me know again how much value my efforts actually like went into your fantasy baseball experience. So like this is what fuels me to do it. Gosh, I freaking love it. So the update is that with the fantasy baseball sheet, there's actually still an anonymous badger on here that I had just under 1,000 people access this free tool, which just really like meant a lot to me because again, like I put a ton of labor and love into this sheet. It takes hours and hours and hours to type out all of these, these descriptions of each player when I think of them specifically going into the season, and why. It takes a lot of time, and I'm glad that again that like it was helpful. A lot of you have told me that it was helpful and that you think that you killed your draft in a positive way because of it. So again, I want to make sure that it's a valuable piece that I continue to provide to you all year after year. But in the comments below, again, like if there's anything that you wish was different, or if there's anything that was confusing, please let me know, because again, I want to make this as valuable as possible. So let's get into the next portion. If you have ever come to Fantasy Baseball on Deck, I always start out with how I'm doing to make sure that like at the very beginning of each show, I am showing you that I am greatly outperforming my peers, because again, I wouldn't have a show if I didn't think that I was extremely good at this thing. I'm trying to make a career out of it. So I always want to make sure that I'm being super transparent with my results so that we can all, again, grow together, but there's a level of trust here. So being that this is the very first week, just want to go over very quickly how I did this last season across my 2 leagues. So one of my slogans is I can't necessarily guarantee you that you'll win your fantasy baseball championship, but I can guarantee you that I'm going to put you in the best position to score the most points. So my goal across my 2 leagues, my 2 example leagues that I share with you guys on the YouTube channel, is that I intend on scoring 1,000 or more points than everybody in the league. Basically, second place and down, I'm going to be that stretched far ahead of everyone else. That I am doing everything in an anticipatory manner. I am obsessed with baseball. I watch it more than anything. I am more knowledgeable about this thing than I am about anything else, because again, I am obsessed with it. So just to go over last year's final standing in my first league, that is basically the dot call league, which is my last name. Points for, I had over 1,000 points, scored more than the second most highest scoring team. And you can even see, like, I scored this amount of points more than everyone else in the league, but I only finished in second place. Everyone got hurt in the fantasy championship. So again, I can guarantee you that you're going to score a lot of points, but I can't guarantee you that people are just going to fall down and die left and right when you're in the championship. So the other thing I was going to say is obviously points for is also illustrated down here. And I've talked about the importance of making sure that all of your pitchers are high strikeout guys, making sure that people are staying off the base paths. So if we look at just overall strikeouts, I had just about 200, 140 people, hundreds, and oh my gosh, 166 more strikeouts than anyone else in the league. There's obviously bonus points attached to this league, so that's like obviously a positive and strategic way of going about it. You want to make sure that you are passively earning points without using your ads. If you're limited on ads or starts per week, making sure that you have starting pitcher tags that like earn saves is something that you can do that's really valuable in your roster construction. This is all depending on kind of like your rules and restrictions on your league. But again, it all depends and differs depending on who you are. In the batting categories, like every single year, I'm just a very balanced individual. I'm never going to be the guy that has the number one amount of home runs. I'm just going to be a guy that's like across every category. I'm going to be in the, the top half per se, because again, it's just kind of like so many of these scoring, these runs and RBIs, like we've talked about before, it's a dependent stat. I can't necessarily, I can't forecast if someone's going to be on base and in scoring position when I get up to the plate, or I'm drafting a player that's getting up to the plate. All we can really do is just project how they individually perform and kind of hold them to that, that standard. So going to what is happening now, we're only 7 days in to, let's say, a 11-day period to start out the baseball season because it starts on a Thursday. It rolls through that next Sunday. So far through just 7 days, essentially, I have scored 892 points, and it's about like 90 points less than the points for, like they're the points for leader currently right now. And that's unacceptable, right? But no, like we're going to talk about sort of like I drafted both of these teams with kind of a lot of the same like foundational foundational principles, but they're kind of constructed differently. Whereas one is a win now team with a lot of value as of today, right now, and then the other one is a very much I'm investing into a month into the future. I'm gonna maybe take a little bit of a hit in performance right now with the expectation to win, but then when I get towards that month, I will be the scariest team in the league by far. So let's look at my roster construction and sort of talk about why I did the things that I did. So in this league specifically, there are big bonuses towards bats that are like home run power hitters. So like all of the points are inflated, but home runs will earn you, if it's just a solo shot home run, will earn you 14.5 points the way that it works out. RBIs are worth 2 points. Runs are worth 2.5 points. Stolen bases are a big bonus at 4 points. So in what I'm going to try to do and what I did in this league is really just try to build a roster that's like hybrid, top of the order guys that are hitting for power, stealing bases, do all those different things. And that's kind of like, that's the ideal situation anyways. But making sure that I'm having more independent fast players in this league specifically is important because it's worth 0.5 more points to score a run than it is to knock one in. And then also being an independent player in this new league that we understand is people stealing all over the place with the pitch clock, having those bonuses put forth for stolen bases is huge as well. So what I did, I drafted a really, really productive lineup that's also very flexible. Looking at our bats specifically, I basically took who I wanted. There wasn't any weird trends where everybody was going after pitchers or all of the bats were disappearing immediately. So I was really able to kind of take who I wanted. And what I'm doing and what I've done here is, if you see, let's skip down to the very, very bottom. Nolan Gorman was a recent ad. I am forced in this league to have a bench position player because the owner of the league. Essentially, he got Shohei Ohtani. I think he might have cheated because he's never made us have a position player bench guy before until he had the number 1 pick overall. So when Shohei Ohtani is starting in his starting pitcher slot, he wanted everyone to have a bench spot so that he could slot into his utility spot. I think that he might have cheated, but I'm not going to start that war because we can overcome it anyways. I don't need to cheat to win fantasy baseball. I just play within the rules, whatever. Okay, so if you are not forced to have a position player, a bench spot, do not have any bench spots position player wise at all. Always have extra pitchers. Have as many extra pitchers as you are allowed to have. The magic number in traditional ESPN formats is that you want 3 really, really good closers. Ideally, if you get points for saves and holds, that expands your points possible kind of thing. But you really want 3 standalone, like very solid and expected to be like, the main guy for saves on teams. So I'm all over the place, but I think it's just important to sort of illustrate that this is a roster that I believe in. I've talked about a lot of these players, and they even illustrate kind of like what I think of them in the the cheat sheet. But if I go to this roster, I have double up positions everywhere except for catcher. And then with the understanding of and the kind of the anticipatory moves that we make, drafting people with the expectations of gaining eligibility. And after the first 10 games of the season, which is just coming up in, let's just say 5 or 6 days, I will add even more flexibility. So even though Jazz Chisholm just got a shoulder stinger today, he's played every single day in center field. I've drafted a player at a position being second base that was really, really shallow this year. Not a ton of second basemen that I liked in general. But I drafted a guy who is going to gain outfield eligibility to basically be able to slot between second base, any of my outfield slots, and my utility slots at any day, shape, whatever happens. Injuries happen, God forsake. So that's a player that's going to gain outfield eligibility. I took a Bobby Witt Jr. who has shortstop and third base eligibility, while a bunch of really good bats were on the board. He had 30 stolen bases this past year, or over 30 stolen bases this past season. It doesn't show last year's stats. So expecting it's not going to be, he has the ability to be a 30 home run, 30 stolen base guy, but Kansas City is traditionally kind of a small market, small ball team. They are always running on the base paths. I expect Bobby Witt to get a lot of those bonus points, be hitting at the top of the order. He fits the mold. Really excited to have him, but I can slot him in between shortstop and third base at any point. Austin Riley is obviously my player. I told everybody I think he's going to be the NL MVP. I think he has the biggest upside of anybody. No one had more total bases than him in all of Major League Baseball last year, other than Aaron Judge in the AL. So I think Austin Riley in his second full season, is going to absolutely run away with the whole thing. But he's gained first base eligibility in the past. We'll see if he subjectively earns it this year. But the understanding that Matt Olson is a Gold Glove first baseman and will never not start there. Austin Riley may accrue enough first base reps throughout the year, maybe when he goes to DH. But that's not something we plan for. Anyways, going down and making sure I got Jordan Walker. On top of me thinking a lot of Jordan Walker and, understanding that I think that he's this year's Julio Rodriguez example. He's more athletic almost in every single way, but he is listed as a third baseman. He came up as a third baseman through the minor leagues, but is going to start every single day in right field and is their best defender, their fastest defender on roster. So knowing that after game 10, Jordan Walker is going to gain outfield eligibility. So knowing that Jordan Walker can slot both into my utility slot, into Austin Riley's position if he had a day off or something, and then also fill any of these outfield spots is huge. And then also going down to Miguel Vargas, who is for his class in the minors. for his class in the minors. He was one of the most pure hitters in his class, but he's listed again as a first baseman coming up through the minors. Freddie Freeman is never going to move from first base with Gavin Lux's injury just to begin the year. This really opened up an opportunity for Miguel Vargas to play second base every single day for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So knowing that Miguel Vargas is going to gain second base eligibility and move to be able to slot in where Jazz is. Jazz is able to slot in where the outfielders are. Jordan Walker's at third base now. He's able to slot in where the outfielders are, and everything kind of in between. Like, I have created a very, very flexible roster, while at the same time, obviously, him being he's able to slot in and fill Vladimir Guerrero's spot if he was on an off day or something like that too. With the idea too that in the future, Bryce Harper is going to come back to the Philadelphia Phillies. I drafted him with like my 200th overall pick. He was ranked at 250. That's a top 15 player. Traditionally, I am going to have to use a utility spot for him. He's not going to play in the outfield, I don't think, this year enough to gain eligibility, or just end up trading him for value back, which is probably what I'll do because I've never owned him in the past and I've always thought he was overrated. But for a pick number 200, I'll take him every time, kind of thing. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see what the market looks like for him. But knowing that he's going to take up one of my utility spots, I can't move him anywhere else. Making sure that I had flexibility across the rest of my roster was important, and I was able to do that. So next, going down to kind of the starting pitchers or in the relief pitchers that I have. If your league requires you to have set starting pitcher slots and relief pitcher slots, not just pitcher slots, like the difference is SP, RP, but if you have a P, that means they can be just a pitcher, single P. That means that you can have either a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher slot in, gives you way more flexibility. But with the strategy of things, you might have been forced to, a lot of like teams in my draft who like didn't prepare correctly, were forced to draft 4 closers. And what happens when everyone's playing all in one day is that you've got 2 closers stuck in your bench that if they earned they earned a save, you don't get any points because they're on their bench. You want to make sure that you have relief pitchers that are tagged as relief pitchers last year, but have graduated into the starting rotation this season and are expected to stay in the starting rotation so that they are going to become RP SP pitcher. So like the example would be last year, Spencer Strider was specifically a relief pitcher to start out the year. They started piggybacking him on, like Bryce Elder and like a couple different other pitchers to sort of like build up his innings and kind of disguise the fact that he was moving into the rotation. So he eventually earned the tag of relief pitcher, starting pitcher. So switch these letters around. It's saying, or like, look at Garrett Whitlock here. Look just like this: relief pitcher, starting pitcher. That means that they are primarily a relief pitcher, but they have a starting pitcher tag. And this is very important. This is the difference. In this league, I'm required, or my max amount of pitchers that I can have are 4 relief pitchers and a set amount of like starting pitchers. They're remaining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can only have 8 starting pitchers, meaning, and I can only have 4 relief pitchers. So I can have 1, 2, and then 2 relief pitchers down here to make up the 4. I wanted to make sure I walked away with Tanner Houck because, again, he's starting in the rotation with Boston this season, and Clark Schmidt is filling in for, the New York Yankees have several injuries to their rotation. So I'm coming into the season with 2 basically like, these closers are temporary. I think AJ Minter is going to keep that closing role for the rest of the year with Atlanta Braves. I think this was a super high value pick, but with the Kendall Graveman pick, I know that he's going to get slotted back to setup man. And it's technically not even the closer right now. It's probably Ronaldo Lopez is their highest leverage, most talented guy, even though Kendall's had a really good year to start the year. I know this he's going to be temporary, but until these relief pitchers earn their starting pitcher tag, which they have to make 5 or 8 starts to gain that starting pitching tag. When I go to move Tanner Hawk into a starting position in the next couple of days, I have to take out one of my relief pitchers. You can see the opportunity to lose points on your bench. Kendall Graveman got a save or a hold the other day or two ago, and I didn't have an opportunity to score points. So this is the roster construction. I went super high K per 9. I went young. This league specifically gives you like bonus points for strikeouts. So like innings pitched per putout. So like an innings pitched 3 outs, you get 6 points. So you get 2 points per out. But per strikeout is 3 points. So you can think about like the difference between if I was to have an immaculate inning or have a perfect inning where I face 3 batters and I put them all away. It's going to either be, I can have 6 points as the lowest. I threw it to the batter. They grounded out to third base 3 times in a row. That's worth 6 points. But if I was to get 3 strikeouts per se, the difference is like 6 points plus 9. So 15 points compared to 6. You can talk about like how much of a difference and how significant that is per inning. So making sure that I have guys that have, more innings pitched than strikeouts. And this is these are the projections, and the actual, scores so far this season will illustrate kind of the same thing. Whereas like you got Spencer Strider went 6 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts, 5 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, 4.1 innings pitched, really inefficient Blake Snell, 9 strikeouts, and so forth, however you say that. So this is the roster that I built for my first team, and I'm pretty happy with it. Next, my second team example. This was like all-star team. I'll never build this good of a team again. But anyways, I was able to almost score 1,000 points over the second highest scoring team. I scored more than 1,000 points more than all but one. And going to the league right now, you can see that I am currently the 4th highest scoring team in the league as of right now, with 4 days to go. You can also see that I am an individual who has pitched 30 less innings than some of the other teams. If you see this draft, like the way the draft went, it's easy to see that like my first starting pitcher that I took that was healthy was Nestor Cortez, because everyone went super duper pitcher heavy. We have 9 pitching slots plus 3 bench slots, which Tatis is just taking up one right now because he's suspended. But like you can see how I really fell behind in the very, like so far, my bats are really carrying me. I have really quality pitching value for where I found them. But you can see how the pitcher or the teams that have scored already, let's say 50 points more than me, already have way more innings pitched, put a lot more investment into getting top of the rotation guys. And I would always do that as well. But it got to a point where I'm going through my bats, and it basically shows that I like the 2 people that shouldn't have been there when they were was Rafael Devers fell all the way to number 36th overall. He usually disappears way before that. The fact that he was available for my 4th pick overall was crazy. I had to take him, kind of thing. And then the next thing, Fernando Tatis Jr., 45th overall. It was for someone who's supposed to hit leadoff, hit 40 home runs for the Padres, who's going to score a ton of runs this year. I couldn't really pass up on the opportunity at Fernando Tatis, who's been in the past a number 1 overall pick, being the 45th overall pick. So you can see how this is more of a investment in the future kind of roster. Like obviously we talked about the importance of making sure that you come away with a really like a stud first baseman that you're never going to slot out, because there's only 5 worth having. I've got 2 third basemen that are like equally scary. I think that again, Austin Riley's gonna be number 1, but Rafael Devers has no reason not to be number 2, other than being kind of surrounded by not the best roster. They're doing well so far, but I have a very, very strong roster in this league as well. And also knowing that I am scoring only the 4th amount fourth most points, but also knowing that I got stuck with, again, Fernando Tatis for the first 20 games essentially of the season. He is going to be suspended, so I therefore cannot incur points for him. Eloy Jimenez just got hurt. I have him in both leagues. That's kind of sucks. And then also knowing that I had one technical error. My one error that I drafted when I drafted my team, I accidentally picked Paul Sewald at the number 116th overall. He's ranked 190th. I was going down queuing all of my players that I wanted. I didn't realize it was my turn next. Usually ESPN gives you like a 3-second slot where you can't draft someone before your team to make sure that you don't accidentally take someone. It literally completely malfunctioned. It drafted me Paul Sewald, even though that's not even the player I was trying to highlight. Drafted me Paul Sewald, and I missed out on Taylor Ward because of it. And also I missed out on Taylor Ward or Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins. And I was pretty freaking upset about it, but I've already made up for it, kind of say, with a trade. So though I do not want Paul Sewald because Andres Munoz is the better option and will close more games in Seattle, he has at least the perceived value that he was a closer last year and that he's going to kind of share saves kind of moving forward. So he's projected to take, to get 22 saves, and that's not going to happen this season. So the projections at least are helping my favor because they aren't updated to the reality of things, which is why we play ESPN fantasy baseball. So I would like to go to the, again, just before I go to the trade, specifically the roster flexibility. Again, a lot of these teams, these teams that I'm drafting, again, Miguel Vargas is going to gain his second base eligibility. He's going to be able to slot up into second base. Second baseman Jazz Chisholm is going to gain outfield eligibility. He's going to be able to slot into second base or the outfield. And so on and so forth. Maybe that's just the only two players that are going to immediately gain eligibility elsewhere, but just making sure that you have players that are flexible, can play multiple positions, is good when you're going to plan on sending assets, trading assets in the future, when they become healthy or whatever. So going to the trade, what I was able to do, what happened this past week is Paul Sewald was lucky enough to be a part of a win. So he won the game at the end of the game against Cleveland. He came in and had a high leverage tie ball game. Innings pitched a couple days later, and then last night he got charged with a couple of runs. But started off the year well when the trade was accepted. Also, Jack Flaherty, this is the first time that he's been healthy since 2019. Jack Flaherty is fully healthy, is a Cy Young candidate. He had 247 or 237 strikeouts in 2019. Is my age, 27 years old. He's primed and ready to go. Apparently, this is the healthiest he's ever been. And the fact that I drafted him at 216 was a huge value pick. But packaging Jack Flaherty, who had 5 innings pitched, no hits. So he no hit Toronto. It's a really good roster. No hit Toronto through 7 walks. So, it wasn't super efficient. So I only made it through 5 innings pitched. 1 less strikeout than innings pitched. That's we don't hate to see that. And he got a win. So he got the bonus win that he can't really control. 17 points looks really, really good. I'm going to now consider players that I'm going to look at players that I think have a higher perceived value than actual value. And my two players that I identified immediately were Paul Sewald and Jack Flaherty. And also knowing that during the draft, pitchers one after another were being taken. That's why I was able to come away with Rafael Devers and Fernando Tatis Jr. when those are players I didn't plan on coming away with at all. I didn't expect them to be there and available. I had to essentially, what am I trying to say? I identify pitchers that everybody was after pitchers. Therefore, that was the most valuable thing. I now want to think back the draft and say who was on auto draft, who missed it. there were two people specifically, and basically go to their rosters and identify kind of where they have holes. So I went to my friend's roster. I looked across and saw the team. I do not love all of the things that I'm seeing, but what is the thing I immediately point out is that Dalton Varsho, he's going to be one of the more valuable catchers. And then if I look down at his utility and bench, he's got 1-2 more catchers that he can't necessarily drop. He would have to trade them, or else he would just be dropping, drafted players for a reason to the Wolves to be claimed, and he just loses value. So my first thought is, okay, he didn't draft Dalton Varsho. He might not understand the value of Dalton Varsho, or he doesn't believe in the value of Dalton Varsho because he didn't get as many at bats last season. He played kind of every day, but Arizona didn't score as many runs as Toronto will. He missed out on a lot of at bats. He was still going between catcher and outfield, so he's having more off days than he will this year. I wonder what he would want for said thing. And just the overall trade that ended up going through was Jack Flaherty and Paul Sewald for Dalton Varsho. So Dalton Varsho, who is the 74th ranked overall player, for what I sent was the 190th and the 240th overall player, because again, perceived value. If I go to make a trade, I don't necessarily know what they were ranked before the draft, but people put a lot of weight into where they drafted said player. So if I pull up Paul Sewald, because I made a mistake, it shows that he was drafted at 116, but he was the 190 ranked player. So this was obviously a mistake. It was an error or whatever, but from the person I traded, from their perspective, it's the 116th ranked player because that's where I took them. And they're going to get 22 saves on a playoff Mariners team. And you can fill in all of the rest of the blanks of kind of why this was maybe valued closer to, what the value that went through. And also seeing Dalton Varsho, he was a 74th ranked player because I know that. I went over to my handy dandy sheet, saw where he was actually ranked in 74, Dalton Varsho. But if I go to where Dalton Varsho is actually drafted, it doesn't show his rank. It shows where he was drafted. He fell all the way to 103rd because people just kind of kept picking over him. And then the auto pick eventually snagged him up for this person's team. So just knowing that the difference between 103 and 116, but it looks like it's very close from a perspective, from your perspective, but in all reality, from player rankings, they couldn't have been separated further. So I got a player who is essentially supposed to score 400 points for two players that I didn't necessarily have a lot invested into, and one I wanted to get rid of regardless. So again, the trade, which I'm super proud of, I'm super happy to have, especially since Eloy Jimenez just went out, is again, Jack Flaherty, or not Jack Flaherty. Dalton Varsho coming in to be able to fill into that catcher outfield slot is awesome. And what I wanted to talk about with Varsho is that it's kind of been under, not a lot of attention has been put to Dalton Varsho, but he is going to have a season, at least in volume, unlike any other besides a Hall of Fame Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge Rodriguez, when he was playing with Texas in 1996. Ivan Rodriguez had 685 plate appearances. He had 639 at bats. 639 at bats. 685 plate appearances is like a player that bats in the top three, shortstop, second baseman. These people that are very, very healthy, play 162 out of 160 games. Essentially, he played 153 games as a catcher. Dalton Varsho is going to absolutely do that with the Toronto Blue Jays. He's today he hit the 4-hole. He's playing outfield every single day. With that roster, he is going to be expected to play every single day. And he's the first catcher since 1996 in Pudge Rodriguez to actually have an opportunity to achieve all that volume. And if you give Dalton Varsho that volume, he is very comparable to a Francisco Lindor, who is a top 30 ranked player as well. And so, if you look at Francisco Lindor in 2022, he had he had 706 plate appearances. He had 630 at bats. If we go to home runs, 26 home runs, stolen bases, 16 stolen bases. If we go to Dalton Varsho for this past year, if we go to him with when he played for Arizona in 2022, he had 592 plate appearances and 531 at bats. So there's 100 at bats different than Francisco Lindor. So give Dalton Varsho 100 more at bats, and he hit more home runs and stole the same amount of bases as, you know, Francisco Lindor, who has a ton of perceived value, but is more of again, an opportunistic volume hitter, which is what he's been over the last couple of years. So going back to that, just being able to sort of uncover the true value of said person, Dalton Varsho, having that catcher eligibility is huge, but he's going to play every single day for a roster that like can't get enough of him, sort of thing. Like, yeah, I listened to the Toronto Blue Jays talk endlessly about how much they loved Dalton Varsho and can't wait to get a lot out of him. So I am going to finish out this video by basically just showing that we've had a ton of growth in the last month, the last 28 days. I've had my subscribers. I'm 20% away from being able to earn money on YouTube from a subscriber perspective. I have 37% of my watch hours for the year already within the last 28 days. Like, I am absolutely like killing it only because you guys are supporting me. Like, I put a ton of time into making these videos. I'm trying to stay on task as much as possible, but I put a lot of notes down trying to only share with you all valuable information to help you succeed for free. The only thing that I ask is that you guys interact with me, let me know how I can help you, help me, kind of thing. Like the videos, like, you know, if you watch the first 15 seconds of a video, get what you need, and the remaining 30 minutes of the video isn't relevant to you, if you could just, like, if you're on a laptop browser, if you could just let it play in the background and, you know, mute it, kind of thing. Like, this helps me achieve my goal, which is to do this, you know, full time for another website. Or if I'm able to make enough money through just YouTube specifically, that would mean the absolute world to me. So moving forward, I just really appreciate all of your support, and all of the feedback that I've gotten from everybody, you know, through this entire year has been nothing but awesome. Like, the questions are really thought-provoking. I really think that we're all learning together as we go. I'm really happy to talk to you guys anytime there's questions. I try to give you as detailed of a report as possible. You know, I just learned that one of my subscribers, or one of you guys, are from Australia. Shane, shout out to Australia. That's super cool. Just the idea of that, like, I'm all the way in Ohio and someone is, you know, again, thinks that my information is valuable. Just freaking means the world. I just think it's super cool. So that's the end of today's video. I just wanted to, again, thank you all for, you know, spending all this time with me and allowing me to be my goofy self, and supporting me and celebrating me for who I am in this space. So, love fantasy baseball. I love you all even more, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.